The reason behind this video is because of an overflow of comments in my Handcam videos asking what the name of my controller is and if it's good for bettering Mishima execution. Hopefully this video covers the questions you have about my Handcam gameplay and the controller. Now the difference between a Victrix Pro and the Victrix Gambit, there's quite a few. The Victrix Pro BFG and the Victrix Gambit, while they look quite similar, they are two different controllers. The Victrix Pro BFG is the better version basically. The Pro's joysticks and D-pad positions can actually be interchanged to suit both the PS5 and Xbox controller format. In addition, the controller is Bluetooth and the buttons can be interchanged between either a right joystick and 4 buttons like a normal controller, or the 4 buttons and no right joystick but instead an L3 and an R3 button like a fight pad. These differences have zero effect to me though. The Gambit edition is solely for Xbox use and I'm playing on an Xbox, so that's calm. Then it's wired, not a problem for me. The L3 and R3, I assigned them to heat and key charge, also not a problem. I'm used to the format of an Xbox controller, so interchanging the position of the D-pad was no use anyways. And it's almost a whole bag cheaper, so why not? This part wasn't in the script, but what I'm going to do is pretend this is a fresh new box that I bought just from the shop. I've kept the packaging for whatever reason and I've put it back in to replicate somebody opening it fresh out of the box without the tape on the side, of course. I've also got a bit of extra explaining to do with these thumb sleeves. I'll explain them in a bit right after I've opened this up. So straight up, firstly the box, obviously it's a good quality, but that's the box. Take the tape off the sides. It's a slide box which is very convenient for a desk. What you get inside is your controller. So what you can see is you have your standard L1, R1, L2, R2. Your Xbox button, so this is exclusively for Xbox and PC. You have your D-pad. This is the D-pad that's initially on it. It's quite good, very smooth and very soft. Good for people who have occasional misinputs. This is definitely strong enough to not have misinputs, but soft enough so if you press something, it registers. The joysticks, good quality. They feel sturdy. They feel nice and grippy. They have good strength to them because I've dropped this controller several times. Obviously your standard buttons. These buttons as well, very good quality, especially with Kazuya's double electrics into CD1+2. I normally press 1+2 like that and it works perfectly, works really nicely for me. This also in the box, this is a case which has a slot for the back, which I'm about to explain. Different size joysticks and grips, so you can see here this grip looks like this, whereas the one I have looks a bit like that. Again, this should help more with FPS gameplay, and this is a video for Tekken gameplay, so it doesn't affect me much. Different size joystick, which again, no effect to me, but might have an effect on other people. Mentioning the gates, again, as you can see, this moves in a circle. I can, in fact, replace it with an octagon-shaped gate. I think they're both the same thing. I think one's for this and one's for the other. And then you have the other D-pad. I personally use this D-pad. Definitely helps with the Mishima gameplay, in my opinion, for my gameplay. Other people might prefer this kind of D-pad, which there's absolutely no problem with. When it comes to interchanging, you can take this off actually. Take the case off, take this D-pad off, put it in. Take this D-pad and in the right place, lock in that D-pad and there you go. In terms of changing the gates, what you do is push out the sides. Put this one in like so. Put the case back on. So now I have, which I like, especially if you're a pole player who likes to do QTF inputs and prefers an octagon gate. And then you apply the D-pad. Now this controller also comes with back paddles. I have one here and one here, so that's 2 different buttons. Now these buttons can be assigned to anything on the controller. For example, I could assign this to forwards, or to circle, or to L3, whatever I want. This can be done by an app downloaded on a computer once you connect it with a wire. However, if you push this trigger, you can easily remove this, put it in the box, and take this one, which offers now 2 buttons on both sides. Easily put it into place. I've got this to be my left input, this as my right, this is my select, and this is my down input. I don't use these at all. My sole focus is to play on the D-pad with extra directional inputs if I want to, but I personally don't use them much in gameplay, so it doesn't matter to me much. But it's nice to have, especially in FPS games as well. These triggers, they change the strength of the triggers at the back. So if you can see, my L2 pushes in fully. If I was to activate this trigger, now I can only push it this much while still registering the input. I personally prefer to have it as a full down input, so that's my preference. Again, this is all subjective. What's also in the box is you have your wire. So this controller specifically is wired only, which I think is absolutely worth it, considering it's £90 cheaper than the other option, which is wired, which is wireless. So I've got no problem with that. Obviously, it comes with a manual, which is disappeared for some reason. Oh, there it is. This has got his own stuff. It has a QR code to them. It has the QR code that you need for the application on your PC. So you download it, connect it through this wire to your PC. You can modify what the back paddles are for, what this button is for, the strength of the mic, the strength of the sound coming through the slot you have underneath for headphones. So the app that comes with it is really nice and definitely works well. This is what my controller normally looks like. I normally have a circular gate, but I don't play with this at all, so it makes no difference to me. I normally have this D-pad on. That's all preference. Other people might prefer the other D-pad, but when it comes to shading while standing 3s, because I like to input while standing 3 with the QCF input, having a smoother D-pad just works better for me. And because I'm so used to the Xbox D-pad controller, I don't know, this suits and fits better with a Series X D-pad like this compared to the other one, because when it comes to a PlayStation D-pad, if I have a PlayStation controller around here, it's kind of battered, but considering this D-pad, you have your 4 directional inputs, nothing specific to diagonal inputs. The Xbox Series D-pad, again, this is the controller I use. It does have specific diagonal inputs, and so does this. Whereas with the other D-pad, it doesn't. So I have this one. Now the explanation to these thumb gloves is because I have sweaty fingers. I have a sweaty thumb, and every time I play, a lot of unwanted friction builds up between my thumb and this D-pad, preventing me from playing properly. Now, obviously I can play normally. It hurt a bit more, only because I have sweaty thumbs and oily thumbs and it doesn't work well. So what I do have are thumb sleeves, and what you can do is, these specifically are from Pro Gameplays. Take one. Now these are designed more so for phone gameplay, so if you're a COD mobile player or PUBG player, this is better or designed for mobile gamers. However, it does work really well for D-pad players too. So taking off this thing, and so this gets rid of all unwanted friction between my thumb and the D-pad, allowing me to play properly. So now what I can do is hook this up to my Xbox and play some Tekken matches for you to see. Right now what I want to do is showcase some Executionist Mishima combos on this D-pad, because why not? Now, when it comes to the pros and cons of this controller, I would say that what I like specifically is, of course, for the joystick players, the fact that there's an interchangeable shape gate for the joystick. If that proves useful for QCF inputs, especially for characters who have sway like Brian or Paul, back sway or forward sway, whichever direction. Having different gates does help. Sometimes I feel like that an octagon gate does help, however, sometimes a circle gate helps, or if you're playing generically or you're playing an FPS game, sometimes a circle gate's more preferable. But again, that's up to preference. I think the Hori Octa also has an octagon gate, so that's a Hori Octa thing. If you're only going for the gate, then that's probably the better option to go for. But when it comes to the D-pad, especially with the interchangeable D-pad, I personally, and I will always probably use this D-pad just because of personal preference, especially with Devils and stuff. And I normally perform my QCF inputs with this. I've just found it much more consistent on this because of how QCF friendly, QCF meaning quarter circle forwards, meaning quarter of a circle forwards. So I've personally found my QCF inputs much more friendly on this D-pad. Also with the changing strength of the L2 and the R2, again that's FPS based. When it comes to wave dashing, for example, having an extra F input. So if I use Jin for now, if I'm using this back paddle right here as a forward input, and I then QCF with my left thumb, I could get some decent wave dash speeds. I'm a bit rusty because I don't do this at all. However, as you can see, I'm getting some decent wave dash speeds. Yeah, this is my normal wave dash speed. So you can compare it. Obviously this makes no difference to me, and the Pro, obviously you can swap the position of these two, joystick and D-pad, and you can also replace this with an L3 and R3 button. However, that's none of my concern. I normally press heat using R3, and yeah, there's no problem with that for me, especially I can do it from Zen cancel too. So 3, 1, Zen into wave dash into cancel using up back into heat. I can do that pretty well. So yeah, Obviously, if I were to go on the other side, having 4 on this side, meaning having 4 in total, meaning 2 on each side, means that if I am on the other side, as shown now, this is forwards instead. So this is forwards when I'm on P2 side, this is forwards when I'm on P1 side, and I can still wave dash pretty fast. So comparing to my actual wave dash on P1 side, which is this speed, and very inconsistent. Couple things I don't like about this controller is I haven't got any complaints with this really. One of the biggest problems I do face is the how easy it is to accidentally press this to trigger it by mistake, and then all of a sudden the button becomes more solid to press. It is a bit irritating. Just to me, this is again preference stuff. I don't like it. It's assigned to my 1+4, so when I'm playing with Devilgen, especially for combo picks from stuff like Can't Take Back 4, again I prefer softer input. So it's really easy to fix as well. So if you're in the middle of a game and all of a sudden solid, just hold it, push it down, let go of the paddle, and then let go of the R2, and it's sorted. I'm pressing it all the way in. That's probably the biggest concern I have. It's gone through throws, it's gone through crushes, this controller, and it's working perfectly. Bit of a squeak. I don't even think you can hear it while I'm wave dashing, especially when I do down forwards, but that's because I abuse this D-pad, and I've shown you 4 electrics from Perfect Electric, and I've shown you wave dash, and I've shown you triple bot standing 3 over and over again. But I've tortured this controller, and it's working pretty well for a controller that's been tortured. I've come across a couple connection issues where in the middle of a match the controller just stopped working. I don't think that's anything to do with the unreliability of the controller. I think that's because one of two things: either I've just not connected it properly, or I've battered this controller so much that it's probably got a damaged wire. Otherwise, the controller works perfectly. It helps a lot. If any of these extra features that are not shown on a PS4, PS5 D-pad or Xbox controller D-pad does come into play here, my final verdict is that if you do have the money to go for something like this and you're willing to buy a new D-pad, 1000% this is definitely a controller worth going for. It works well in all things. You've got the optional D-pads, you've got the optional back buttons, and obviously if you're going to pay this much money, feel free to use it. I also had a video going up asking people for their opinions on this, whether wave dashing with this is moral, and about 95% of the answers were yes, it's moral. You paid money for this, you use it. Yes, controllers have it. And 90% of that 95 said hitbox users have that available anyways, so what's the problem with you using it? So from a moral perspective, which is a bit strange to say, especially in Tekken, wave dashing with the back battles is no problem with it, and again, it's all preference things. That's all I've got to say about this controller. Again, final verdict: 100% would recommend this controller if you've got the money to buy it, if you've got the money and you're willing to invest in a new controller for the purpose of a D-pad or directional gates. If you are looking for specifically an octagon gate for the joystick, then get yourself a Hori Octa, solely because that's one of the biggest features and specialties about the Hori Octa, and then it would prove slightly more cheaper, I'd assume. However, the Victrix makes perfect sense, was worth the money for me, and I would recommend.